K&A Custom Crafts on Facebook.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host, none other than Mr. Mess Around Dave, and you're watching another episode of the Coast to Coast Red Tae Files. So tonight, we actually have an interesting, so to say, case review. They actually call her Jane Doe. This case was actually sent to us by one of our viewers that requested us to do this case. So tonight is the night that we're deciding to go ahead and do this case. So as always, I will go ahead and I will send it out to Mess Around Dave first, and I will let you know that you can go ahead and start out with the first spot.
All right, so this case is really interesting. There's a lot to go on here. They call her El Dorado Jane Doe. It's a name given to an unidentified American woman, and she's also an identity thief.
Mm-hmm.
She had so many names. She went under Mercedes, which is how her friends knew her, Cheryl Ann Wick, Kelly Lee Carr, Kelly Carr, Shannon Wiley, Cheryl Kaufman, Sharon Wiley, none of which were found to be a real name.
Yeah, which is interesting because when you think about it, she had been arrested like umpteen times for various things. You know, there was prostitution, there was lewd acts, and then eventually what happens is when you get arrested all these times and you get into prostitution and then lewd acts and everything, you know that originally, and eventually something's going to happen, that you're going to get in with the wrong crowd and something's going to happen. Because a lot of times you hear when somebody disappears, you go, oh, this individual was a prostitute. They were picked up on the side of the street or whatever, and they were taken here. If this is one of those cases, we don't know.
There's just so much weird stuff that went on with this case. Like, she lived in a bunch of states prior to dying: Texas, Louisiana. Like I said, she was involved in sex work, prostitution. At one point, she told her friends that she had 2 kids and that she'd been involved in a bank robbery on the East Coast. Her murderer was identified as her ex-boyfriend and alleged pimp, James McAlphin. He was quickly convicted, but her true identity still remained unknown.
Yeah, so the thing is, though, so the interesting thing about this case, and we heard it because, normally we do cases to where it's kind of one of those unsolved things, but this one was solved. The only thing is they don't know who she is. That's really the only really unsolved portion about this. They've never been able to figure that out.
The pimp was gonna tell him the name, but he had a catch. Mm-hmm. He said, I will tell you her name and her identity and all that stuff if you give me $4,000. Yeah. We don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, remember though, not only did he want money, but at one point he mentioned immunity also.
Yeah, he wanted immunity too, yeah.
So he said, I will tell you her name, but you have to drop the charges on me. You can't charge me for the murder or anything else. And so apparently, when you get to this, obviously, if the murder is that bad, they know who you are. They're not going to drop it because they're not going after anybody else. They have who did it. So if anything, what they're going to do is they can try and exhume the body at this point and try and figure it out.
Well, apparently, when these two originally met, they began a relationship. Dude would beat her up and send her to the hospital a lot. And then she left McAlpin in 91 and moved with a friend named Andrea Cooksley. And then on July 10th, he managed to get her to come to a hotel room with the Whitehall Motel with an offer of money. A neighbor, Roy Charles Minson, witnessed part of the interaction between Mercedes and McAlpin that night. When he stopped by to ask for the return of some cassette tapes he'd lent out, Mercedes indicated to Minson that he should talk to McAlpin and attempted to leave, going out of the parking lot before McAlpin stopped her and hit her, yelling, "Get back in the room, bitch." He dragged her back into the room as Minson left. From next door, Minson heard the two arguing back and forth before hearing a gunshot that ended the dispute. Witnesses saw McAlpin flee, getting in his vehicle and speeding off.
Yeah, it's... So this is kind of where, to me, it gets interesting, too, because there is so many... So we talk about the Mercedes that she was in. We talk about her friend Cheryl Wick. We talk about the Kelly Carr. Now, keep in mind, this is where it got too confusing, because there was two Kelly Carrs. There was two Kelly Carrs that were involved in this, but each of them spelled their last names differently.
Well, those are the identities that she used, right?
Yeah, but they were supposedly her friends. That's what she was saying. Well, that they were supposedly her friends. So she supposedly sold her friend's identity, so to say, I guess. And when it went to that, so just so everybody knows, she died July 10th of 1991. So, and the cause of murder, the cause of murder that was stated on this was that they were saying was homicide by broken neck after being shot.
Yeah.
So it was like double one. And so known for an unidentified descent. So activities prior to death. So arrest record. Let's go ahead and start there. So December 31st, 1990. Arrested as Cheryl Ann Wick for prostitution. This was just one of her many things. And then you have January 26, 1991. She was arrested in Dallas. Now, this one doesn't say what she was arrested in Dallas for. I'm guessing
prostitution.
I'm guessing it was prostitution. That's what I'm guessing. And then February 8th, 1991, she was arrested as Cheryl Ann Wick. So again, as Cheryl Wick. And this one was for public lewdness. And this was at a hotel. So if anybody not sure what that means, that basically means, being like indecent exposure and things like that. And then May of 1991, arrested as Cheryl Ann Wick again for writing bad checks. So several times she was arrested. And then James McAlpin, which you had stated, they were dating at that point. A neighbor, Roy Minnan, witnessed part of the altercation between Mercedes and McAlpin that night when he stopped by to ask for the return of some cassette tapes he had lent out. Mercedes had indicated Minnan that he should talk to McAlpin and attempted to leave, going out into the parking lot before McAlpin stopped her and hit her. Yep, yelling back, get in the car. Yep, then did all that. Now, when it comes to the investigation, McAlpin was soon arrested and charged with first-degree murder and second-degree battery. He denied killing Mercedes, claiming she had shot herself in a suicide attempt, that he had only hit her. So
Come on, who's going to believe that?
Yeah, so it goes from you have an altercation in the parking lot, people see it. So it goes from that. And then it goes from the lady actually being supposedly shot. Now he says suicide, but come on, nobody really thinks it's suicide because people have seen you fighting. So people at this point don't really think it's suicide. The police dismissed his claim. McAlpin further refused to identify the descendant unless the police agreed to do something for him. Okay, the police looked to Mercedes' possessions to glean her identity. They found a social security card, an identification card with her photo that identified her as Cheryl Ann Wick. So that's
This is where it gets interesting.
yeah. So
They tracked Wick to Minneapolis, Minnesota,
mhm.
contacted her family to inform them of their loss. The Wick family responded by putting the police in touch with the real Cheryl Ann Wick, who was still alive and claimed her identity had been stolen.
Yeah, Wick theorized her social security and identification while she was working as at a dancer for a Minneapolis company called Party Time and denied ever having known Mercedes.
It's still to this day, they still don't know the true identity of Mercedes.
Yeah. But remember, Mercedes was also a nickname that this Jane Doe went by. It was still a nickname. So she was one. This was one of the multiple nicknames. The police were left dumbfounded with no clue as to the true identity of Mercedes. Interesting facts, right? So like all these things are like queuing up. They obviously know who did it. They obviously have the person arrested at this point because her boyfriend's arrested at this point in time.
Yeah.
What they're really trying to find out is what her name is. What the
Who
heck
was
is her
she?
name?
Yeah.
Because she had gone by 5 different names and nobody could figure out, what is this lady's name. So accounts of her past for Mercedes. The Mercedes,
So many stories. So many
huh?
stories.
Yeah, there is like there's so many different stories on all these names that she went by, had told differing stories about her past, making it hard to separate fact from fiction. And this is where I guess in reality you never really know anything's going to happen because you don't expect anything to happen. Now, would she have told everybody the truth about who she actually was had she known something was going to happen? Because my thing is, it makes me wonder why she was trying to hide her true identity in the first place.
Right? Like, was her name really that bad off to tell people her name? Was she wanted?
That was my true thinking when I was looking into this whole story. It makes me think she had to be wanted or something, because why would somebody go from basically saying I don't really want to tell you my real name to having 5 or 6 different aliases that you go by?
And she told her friend that she had 2 kids. She was a stripper. She didn't get along with her mom. She was in the witness protection program, and then her father was in the mafia.
Yeah, was in the mafia. Now, maybe indeed her father was in the mafia. So if her father was in the mafia, maybe that would be why she would try and hide her name. Maybe.
Some had heard that she was wanted for bank robberies on the East Coast, but the police looked into that. They couldn't discover any bank robberies to which she could be definitely tied to.
Yeah, Mercedes also mentioned accompanying African American male at truck stops where she had been tasked with luring truck drivers in order to rob them. So that was a whole nother thing too that was kind of set up about all these different things. Like, so you can tell by all these stories that we're talking about here, she definitely had a troubling past.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely a troubling past.
It's one way to put it.
But when you go back to the whole story about whether her boyfriend actually killed her, well, since he kind of said he did it, I don't believe the whole whole suicide thing. Like he said at first, he tried to say that at first, but then once he realized that there was going to be no immunity, they weren't going to pay him. It's like, confess he did it, but I'm not telling you her real name. But
and then I guess in 1998 on November 12th, there was an unsolved murder of a truck driver, Dwayne McCorkindale.
Yeah,
that she says she was involved with, but there's no definitive ties to that either.
Yeah. So the thing though is this: you would think out of all the people she knows, right? Out of all the friends she has, all the people she knows, you would think that somebody would be nice enough to step forward. Somebody would step forward and somebody would say, "Hey, this is her true identity." And so just so everybody knows, the point of the show tonight is to not only really mention that we're trying to, because we know what happened to this individual. We've already said we know what happened. She was killed. We know that. This episode is strictly trying to figure out the name of the individual. That's what this episode is truly about.
There's only one story on here that I can actually truly believe to be 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
She was a volunteer at the Salvation Army.
Yep.
That's believable.
Now, don't forget that other pimp's name was Tyrone, but they never found this Tyrone.
Oh yeah, and then Jeffrey Davis.
So as of 2019, which was the earliest developments that they had for this case, the second cousin of the victim living in Alabama was identified by a geologist using genetic geology after uploading the unidentified woman's DNA to the GED match database. The cousin did not recognize the victim, but stated she resembled members of the family. So interesting, interesting, right?
Kind of weird that they don't give a name of the second cousin. So
They don't. This is what's so puzzling. They said that this lady knew all these people, but they barely release any names of the people whatsoever.
So at least you'd have a last name to go off of. You know, if she resembles that family, maybe she is part of that family.
Right. And so if you release that, then maybe that family can step forward and be like, I do know her. She was a member of our family, and this is her true identity. And then at this point, it's about getting closure. That's what it's truly about at this point, is trying to bring closure. To that family at this point in time, because there. And I'm not saying there is, because, you know, if her father was indeed part of the mafia, you never really know if he's actually out there looking for her or whatever. You never know what her mother's doing. If she had sisters, her kids, but do her kids actually know her? Because as stated before,
she even really have kids?
Yeah, and that could be another thing too. We don't actually know if she has kids. We know that she stated that her mother took care of her kids most of the time anyways.
Yeah, so, I don't know whether to believe anything that comes out of this lady's mouth. Everything she says and done sounds like something that's like fabricated. I don't know.
Yeah, but
that part could be true though. I mean, the mafia thing and then the bank robbery is a little far-fetched.
So you don't think that the bank robberies actually happened? Because I know that they stepped forward and said that they don't have evidence for it. But even back then, I think there was still some kind of video recorders that they could have maybe potentially linked up at this point.
I mean, if she did rob a bank, you think that she wouldn't be going back to the streets to turn tricks.
But
I'm just saying.
Keep this down, please.
Yeah, but you remember the show Point Break, right? You know, even though they had, you know, robbed, you know, bank after bank, they were still doing it, and they already had money. and they were still robbing banks continuously.
True, but for someone like her that went from the streets, and it all depends on how much they got to the bank too, because sometimes they don't have all the money there, and it takes a manager to get into the vault or whatever. I don't know how it works. I've never robbed a bank, obviously. So
right, yeah, definitely no felonies committed. I'm telling you here, no felonies committed between either of us. So there you go. No,
I only know what I've seen from the movies.
Yeah, no bank robberies, no nothing. It's just we're just talking about this because we don't know exactly what happened. We don't really have any I wish we had distinct features to really tell you.
You don't put the whole paper back in his bag.
But there really is no distinct features at this point in time that we can really give you because there really wasn't any distinct features that they released. There really wasn't a whole lot. It was simply just.
I mean, this is the most we've had for any case that we've done so far. This is the most information we've had.
Yeah, but I mean,
still, it's not a whole lot.
Yeah, but I'm talking about distinct features such as, what did her face look like? Did she have marks on her body? Did she have, tattoos anywhere, like on her neck? Did she have tattoos on her back, on her hand, on her? We don't have a lot of this information.
Hold on a sec.
I know there was some, but there wasn't a lot. And that's where all we're trying to do is help potentially maybe a family get closure. If somebody
This is the picture that they have of her.
Right,
I don't know if it's her, but
yeah, but that's kind of one of the older. That was definitely one of the older ones because this happened back in 1991. So
yeah. So I don't know if that's an exact photo of her, but it is a picture that says it's her.
Yeah, the weird thing is though is it doesn't say what year the picture was from, what year and day that picture was from. So that's where it gets confusing.
It doesn't. It just says photograph of the victim. So that was her, but still weird that they can't put a name to her.
Okay. Oh, I get what this is saying now. This had confused me at first because when this said born, right? So I was looking at like the year it said she was born, and it looked like it said she was born in 1960 and lived until 1973, and I'm like, no, that's not accurate. I go, yeah, because I was looking at this. Yeah, because I was looking at this, going, wait, that doesn't make any sense. So then I went back and I had to look again, and basically what they're projecting is that this lady was born anywhere.
She was born in that time frame.
Yeah, she was born from that time frame.
Yeah.
And so because she was killed in 91. So
she was born in 1960, died in 73.
Yeah, so she was born somewhere in that time frame. They're just not sure exactly where she was born in that time frame. That's where it kind of gets the whole confusing aspect. But if anybody recognizes any of these names, I know this is back in 91, so that still doesn't make you, super old back from 91. Some of you people might be in your 50s, whatever. But if you recognize any of these names and you know the real name, go ahead and step up. You have Mercedes, you have Cheryl Ann Wick, you have Kelly Lee Carr / there was 2 different cars though that she went by.
I was 13 when she, yeah.
So there was 2 cars because there's CARR and then there was also KARR. So 2 different cars that she went by, and then Shannon and Sharon, and then Wiley. Oh, and then Cheryl Kaufman was the last name that she had.
That seemed to be the one she used the most.
The one that seemed that she used the most that I read, but maybe you might have read something else, was that she went by Cheryl Ann Wick a lot. because when she was arrested.
Oh yeah, with
Yeah.
Cheryl. Yeah,
When she was arrested, a lot of times the name was Cheryl Ann Wick.
yeah.
So if anybody knows anything, speak up, say whatever it is you know. Sorry, there's not really a whole lot to go on. I wish we could give you some more details. But the good thing is next week we're actually having we're going to have a third host on the show. We're going to have we're going to be bringing a female perspective who has actually background in this type of stuff. So it's going to be cool. We're going to definitely have that side of things.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice to get that female perspective on things. That she might see things that we don't.
Definitely,
especially because she has a background for it. So
definitely, I'm very excited about that. All right, so we're right about that time that we normally are every week. So mess around. What are your kind of final thoughts on this case? Do you think that they're going to ever figure out her true identity?
it's gonna die with the guy that's in prison, the guy that killed her. He's not gonna say unless he gets what he wants. And even then, even if he does get what he wants, who knows if he gives him a name that's the real name. He could just maybe he didn't even know her real identity.
And that could be it too. He could be lying about it and saying he knows her real identity, but he actually doesn't know the real identity, and he's just trying to stay out of jail or prison, I should say.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's going to be interesting though. I, on the other hand, am kind of with you. I don't feel like they will ever find out the true identity. It'll probably go to the grave with that person or whoever else might know.
I don't know, with the advances in DNA and all that forensic stuff from today that they didn't have back then. Maybe, like you said, they should exhume the body and, run all those tests.
Yeah, if it's not too far gone, though.
Yeah, if it's not too far gone. Maybe they saved some vials of DNA from the first time they did it. Who knows?
They very well could have done that also. But, again, this was one of the cases that we had the most stuff on, but still not a whole lot. Yeah. So we definitely hope everybody enjoys our show. Like we said, next week that we're going to have another perspective so we can be even talking even more with that female perspective of things. Even if you have a case that you would like us to talk about, go ahead and kind of throw that out there, and we'll try and get to it as soon as we can. We have a list of cases that we want to talk about. This is actually one of our favorite shows that we really, really enjoy doing. This has kind of been my thing that I've really enjoyed for a while, and Mess Around and enjoys it too. So
I fall asleep every night watching stuff like this. So
right. Absolutely. This is just fantastic stuff. And, we do this to maybe we can help a family one day get closure. So if anybody can, that would be fantastic. But, and don't forget though, coming up here on the network, besides this show, we have a brand new show debuting on Thursday. That's right. It's going to be absolute fire. It's going to be a great show. We definitely hope you're going to look forward to that. It's going to feature myself and Mess Around, and then that's right, and then Biggie. So it's the Biggie Skinny featuring Mess Around show.
It's an old show. It's what we first started out on before, years before we even thought of this.
We're going to run it back. We're going to run it back, running it back. All right. So with that, we definitely want to thank everybody for watching the show tonight, and we will be able to see you next Monday again for another episode of the Coast to Coast Red Tae Files. Mess Around, Dave. Any final words?
Yeah, love this show. Like I said, it's he's the one that approached me about this whole thing, doing it. He's like, "Hey, dude, you want to do cold case type files show?" I was like, "Hell yeah, dude, man, I love that type of stuff." So, and Tim Ossione, if you're watching,
that you talking.
All right. So, thank you very much, and we will see you next Monday for another episode of the Red Tape Files. Have a fantastic night.